UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Good evening and welcome to Behind the Headlines. Happy Martyrs Day to all of you. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. Today we'll look at the Balaalo Question. Despite the numerous presidential directives and guidelines, especially the Executive Order number 3 that came in May 2023, this has become a stalemate, especially asking questions around this dilemma. With the 14-day ultimatum given and the last day coming tomorrow, what does that mean? Whichever way you look at it, this Balaalo Question has left us with a window of bigger and broader questions to ask. Questions of identity, questions of self-determination, questions of citizenship and land. But the biggest question of them all is, can government solve this multifaceted challenge that looms all over this country, especially with this group of people? We talk about people from Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, but also Ugandans and South Sudanese that are involved in this whole activity. What does that mean for our existence as a country? But also, is Uganda still a myth, especially looking at how fragile we could be put together by a political framework? Let me get to the gentlemen in the studio so far as we get to this discussion. On my immediate left, Honorable Mukasa Mbide, the new Deputy President of the Democratic Party, but also Member of Parliament of the Yala, Emeritus, here with us this evening. Good evening, Honorable, and it's good to have you.
Thank you, my brother, and I equally greet my senior and the viewers.
Honorable, first and foremost, congratulations that you delivered twins.
Thank you very much.
But the smoke was black.
No, it was extremely white, and we are very grateful to God that everything moved as planned. As planned? Yes.
There are questions around that, Honorable, especially looking at that the returning officer was the only sole candidate there. He was seconded and nominated with no competition at all.
Not at all. Actually, a lot of most Democrats that gave opinions on that matter had not looked at the amendment, the constitutional amendment of Article 65 of the DP Constitution. Ideally, what would happen was that the delegates conference itself chooses from among themselves a person to chair election exercises. Now with the amendment, it is a different issue. There is even vetting before a person of that nature is arrived at. And we convened the National Executive Committee within the entirety of the delegates conference. It was convened internally, and all of those actually most of the persons that were campaigning, some of them were members of the National Executive Committee. So before its dissolution, it convened to transmit the names suggested from within the National Executive Committee in accordance to the amendment to the delegates conference, where a motion was moved and accepted that the person continues, who had actually served on the verification committee of the election management. It's a very technical matter, and it is very unlikely that the public would understand it except if civic education were conducted.
Very interesting that you throw a low punch to civic education, but the question is, what does this mean for the cooperations agreement? Now, we had Siranda, we had Honorable Mao. Are you the Trinity now?
No, there was nothing to do with the cooperation agreement.
Because it's the next
during
discussion.
The organization. Actually, what we did was to shelve that debate and constitute government. Then we now pick that debate again with the two motions that were shelved from Soroti.
Thank you very much. Next to Honorable Mbide is Honorable Lumala Emmanuel Dombo, the Director in charge of Information and Publicity at the National Resistance Movement Secretariat. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Bwana Nyangweso. When we were young and growing up, we only knew of General Nyangweso. And every time that name comes, I always add General. I don't know when you become General in the news or Rio, but it's a pleasure for me to be here after a while.
Honorable, I have been watching the I should call them the nominations, especially that were happening at the grassroots, some seeming violent, but the ones for LC5, the ones contesting for members of parliament yesterday and today, seem relatively calm. How is it going?
The national resistance movement is progressively improving its setup and institutions, and using technology on how to improve and the way we do our work. You remember that during the last elections, during the primaries, the national resistance movement did not have a register. Over the years, the party has funded and the secretariat has worked extremely hard to ensure that the party constructs a register, and we must rely on the register for nomination. You must prove membership of the party. And secondly, we have relied on the register to vote and determine office bearers and flag bearers for LC1, and we intend to rely on it for the primary elections, which are coming due next month. The exercise, I want to pay tribute to the NRM Electoral Commission. The level of organization has been very meticulous. Dr. Tanga Odoy and team, Bwana Secretary General and the entire team has done a meticulous job to ensure that the neighbors are not disturbed of the Secretariat and the Plot 13 because of the flawless exercise. People come in and people go, and we have been trying to average on time from the time when somebody enters in to the time when somebody exits. The exercise should take less than 15 minutes. And this has been simultaneously done for various regions.
Okay.
So the exercise has been excellent, and whoever has come there, he has wondered on how this has been achieved. The other thing I want to tell you, last time I was here, I came here to defend the numbers of NRM when we mentioned our numbers as about 20 million. Everybody was in social media and the regular media to show how NRM was forging the numbers. But after people watching the exercise right from the grassroots elections and the enthusiasm in people picking the nomination forms for the election of national leaders, but also at district level, people are picking forms simultaneously for the election of sub-county chairpersons, district councillors, and such leaders at the district level. So this is an exercise which is taking place in the whole country. And just wait when we open up for nomination of the President and the Central Executive Committee. It will even going to be more interesting.
I like that you use the word interesting. Let's keep a pulse on what is happening there. Next to me is Professor Sarah Sali, the director at the Institute of Gender and Development Studies at Makerere University. She's with us this evening. Good evening, Professor, and happy Martyrs Day. Were you there? Were you not there?
Good evening, Timothy, and good evening, our viewers. I did not go to Namugongo for Martyrs Day. I celebrated Martyrs Day where I was. I was coming from Pianupe, and I was returning to Kampala on Martyrs Day.
Yeah, welcome back.
But we appreciate that it was interesting. The previous week I had been in Chigezi, and we had seen people beginning to walk. And it is impressive to see how people are committed to walk those long distances. And yesterday as we were coming in, it was interesting to see many buses going east, buses that came from Kenya to bring people to pray. And I actually started reflecting on how important, beyond the spirituality,
yes,
the event is in this country. It seems to be the only event which congregates everybody else into here. We even heard of delegates coming from as far as Nigeria, as far as Cameroon. So it's South Sudan, it's a very important event in the lives of many people on the continent and beyond. And it also postures us in a very positive light that people actually are ready to walk, people are ready to travel, and it's good for tourism. It's also good for the East African Federation in general. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Just a quick update. We are on YouTube. You can get there and drop your comment on the question that we're going to be answering about the Balaalo. But also, the number to text or to WhatsApp us is 0709 60 25 92 for text or WhatsApp. We'll be reading those at the top of the hour. And let's get into some of the things that happened. The Wakiso police station was raided by the army. 13 of them have been arrested. The security agencies have responded to that. But also tomorrow, the State of the Nations will be happening at Kololo. The president will be addressing the nation on where we are as a country, especially in the last 12 months, at 2 p.m. there. But also there was a bombing that happened in Munyonyo. 2 people died there, and from reports we have got, they are linking them to the ADF, and we're called to be able to be secure as you move. Lastly, but not least, where we're going to comment and pay tribute, I know Professor Honorable Dombo and also Honorable Mbide, you both know Cedric Babu very well, but also close. You know Captain Francis Babu very well. He has been a guest here numerous times, and it's only befitting that we pay tribute to Cedric Babu. Body arrived today, laying at Cedric's home. The same tomorrow. Service will happen on Friday. Burial is over the weekend there. Very sad to lose someone at the age of 46 that has had tremendous influence on sports. He ran for campaigns last year in 2021, won the flag of the NRM. Your tribute, Professor, then I'll get to Honorable, and lastly, Honorable Dombo there.
Yes, thank you very much, Timothy. Of course, I didn't know Cedric personally, but I know his dad personally, and I know his mother very personally. I think it was scary. It's really scary that a young man at the prime of his life goes the way he goes. And if what is in the papers is anything to go with, he had gone for a tennis tournament in Rwanda. We are always told if you play sports, things like that do not happen. And it was actually in the game of sports that this really did happen. So it shows you about the unpredictability of life, and they need to be ready all the time. But I think I was also wondering, you know, he's a young man with a very young family, so we have orphans there. And for any parent with an older child, we also have old children, it is scary because you tend to think that as you come to the end of your life, these people are going to carry on from you. So when they go before you, it sort of creates confusion in your mind, because it's like the order of life has been reversed, but of course we are not God. So I think I would like to condole with the Captain Francis Babu family. It's a very, very sad moment. I don't know what words can explain or can make anyone understand what has happened. It's a very sad moment for his parents, for his younger children, for his wife, for his friends, and for everyone in the sports and media fraternity, because he was also in the media. We hear that he was also in sports, he was also in politics. This was a young man at the prime of his life, ready to begin impacting society. So if we begin losing such people, I think it's a very big loss, not just for his immediate family, but for the country at large. I don't know what this talks to us about non-communicable diseases, but maybe we should pay more attention to checking for these non-communicable diseases, but which also ties in with maybe how health is promoted in this country and the need to check more, but also to make it more costly. Because while we know about Cedric, who is a prominent personality, probably there are many other people who are experiencing this, but if we could promote health tests more and make it easier for very many people to undergo these tests, but also probably take services closer to the people to undertake these tests, probably some of these things will be arrested. But as I said, I'm not close. I didn't know him, so I'm not that close to really explain what happened beyond what I've read in the papers. But all I can say is we shall miss him as a country, and please rest in peace, and may God comfort the bereaved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mukasambit.
Yeah. Just in addition to what the professor has said, incidentally, we have been having a very close relationship with Cedric, despite that we have always had divergent views, particularly on politics of Uganda, but we would still have convergence areas. For example, in terms of patriotism, we had a convergence. I would be invited to the PLU to address them, particularly on patriotism. I remember there was a time when we developed an argument when I told him that, when I told the congregation that actually patriotism means even saving your own country from your own government. So, and you know, he would always be fascinated with my presentations of issues. There would in fact be certain incidences where people would think we actually looked alike at some stage. And clearly, my closeness to the father was also something that anyone would definitely take home. I am very close to that family. We have worked in politics. We have definitely met in the arena of discussions, debates, and all this. So I'm potentially crestfallen. It is a condition that I described as woebegone. If anybody had to depart from the country, certainly it wouldn't have been him, by all standards, even age and all of that. So clearly he had a bigger future. We had clearly sometimes even very close friends. I have lost a brother. In my opinion, if I had an opportunity to advise on departures that were orchestrated by God, I think this would have been a miscalculation. He had a lot to do. The country needed him. May his soul rest in eternal peace.
Honorable Dombo, you know the veteran senior citizen, Captain Francis Babu. You know the son. You were part of the elections of last year where he ran for Kampala there. But also question marks on the 1.5 billion and his heart issue and our health sector. Your tribute to him, but also, let's talk about health a little bit there.
Honorable Francis Babu is one of the senior politicians in the national resistance movement who rose up to the apex of the party by being a member of the Central Executive Committee. He served in government as minister. He was a member of parliament. He's a very civil individual and very brilliant. He's a person you'd want to really have a discussion with about matters political, matters economy or social. And he's very open. And because of that, he has been a very big resource to he is a very big resource to the party. And because of that, therefore, allow me on behalf of the national resistance movement, on behalf of the people of Uganda and those viewing, to commiserate with the family of Honorable Francis Babu. You know, death, whenever it strikes, it becomes foreign and new. Even in times when people would say somebody has been frail and sick and very old. But when death comes, it becomes new, it becomes shocking, and robs you of a dear one. Therefore, Honorable Francis Babu kindly accept our commiseration and our condolences. And take heart, because the Holy Books tell us that death and life is willed by God. Even when people will talk about the health sector and all this, the final thing comes to say, death and life is willed by God. We need to improve our medical services, but there is no hospital in the world that prevents death. That should be the minimum. You have seen us, how often we have flocked to Nairobi going to the Aga Khan hospital. And recently when I was reading, I saw that even the Aga Khan died, but could be not in his own hospital. So death, when it comes, that is the will of God. But the leaders and the politicians have a duty and responsibility to ensure that we set up standards or good health facilities so that life can be prolonged and enhanced, so that by the time death comes, people will not be saying he's fit to go, but at least there will be no regrets about what they should have done else in order to save the life of the person who is affected. When I was a member of parliament, I had an opportunity to go for a working visit to India with the speaker. And while we were there with members of the commission, we said, but we have been reading about Medanta Hospital in India. Is it possible for us to inquire whether we can do just a medical checkup? We asked the ambassador to book for us. What was so surprising, first of all, was the cost. For $300, we were able to do tests until we got tired. The entire day, we went through machine to machine, through tests and tests for $300. Somebody was able to do a wellness, what they call a wellness check. And by the time they constructed the reports to interact with the consultants, cardiac, sijui, gastro, something, brain, in order to tell you the condition about your health. We were intrigued and we asked them, is this something that is available and is encouraged? They said, yes, many people in India and many countries are encouraged to do wellness tests in order to help them discover some of the ailments that they may have. Unfortunately, when we came here in Uganda and tried to ask, just one test to go through some of these machines in Uganda, it can cost over 2 million shillings. So even if somebody wanted to do a wellness test and you decided to go in one of these facilities to do this, it would be very expensive and not many Ugandans would afford it. This therefore leads me to ask the other question. Kenya has pulled off the national insurance scheme, health insurance scheme. Other countries are following suit. I don't know at what level we are. The cost of medication is definitely something that is prohibitive in this country. And it requires a very definitive policy, which we should if we have to keep our people healthy. This is something we shall leave the policymakers and the politicians in order to see what is the best that we can do. But the family of Babu kindly accept our commiserations. And the politicians, let us work hard to improve the health services, so that even when we die, nobody will regret that there is something else that we should have done that we haven't done.
Thank you very much. I'll introduce the guest that has just come in a short while there. But let me give context to our conversation so that I can be able to get into our conversation here. In 2009, a group of Ugandans, or Balaalo as they had named them, moved to the northern region there. But a lot has been up and about between 2015 onwards. There also are allegations or reports that say in 2015, about 11,000 people left Tanzania to come back to Uganda. The president put an executive order in 2023 May, and about 7,200 cattle were moved from the north back to the regions that they belong to. There were a few guidelines that were given, things like fencing, things like having a water place for your animals there, but also to ensure that your animals do not cross into the lands of the other people. But recently, after the quarantine was done, the minister in charge of the northern region came out to give an ultimatum for 14 days, which ultimatum runs out tomorrow. What does that mean? There's also a question about what happened to the verification committee, and that's the biggest question. I've been joined by Mr. Daniel Barechi, who is the media coordinator for the Northern Uganda Migrant Cattle Keepers and Crop Farmers Association. Daniel, you're very welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I also know that you're frail, but you've been able to make it here. We appreciate it. Let me start with Honorable Dombo, before I come to you, Daniel. Honorable Dombo, Why is government handling this matter with children's gloves, and why are you dragging this whole resolving of the Balaalo issue? Because I know 14 years ago it was in Bulisa. And there is also an issue that there was an issue in Bulisa about them. So how comes this has moved northwards and government has dragged for 2 years? A directive was given in May, gone on to July to be suspended, guidelines were given, now enforcement has happened. The same group of Balaalo are complaining that no meeting has been had with the Honorable Kenneth Omona, especially with them. Why is government dragging, and why have you failed to resolve this issue?
But Nyangweso, this is a very delicate matter that we are dealing with, because it affects people's lives, it affects people's cultures and way of life, but also it affects what is provided for in the Constitution, how people can stay or where people can stay in Uganda, because the Constitution guarantees certain things. The government of Uganda made a decision, and when I was coming here, I made a consultation with the Honorable Crispus Kiyonga and the Honorable Mona. Say we are going to talk about this matter. What is the most recent? Because I'm not a spokesperson for government, but I speak for the National Resistance Movement. And the cabinet sits every Monday. So there could have been a position which government has arrived at in the recent meeting in Monday. So the reason I go to Omona, and he actually said, government is very serious, the deadline counts, and already collection centers have been established, and cows must be driven out of the north. That is what Honorable Mona told me, and he said, please quote me. And he said, if there is anybody who has claims over land, the land matters will be dealt with after the cows have been moved out of northern Uganda.
But Honorable, some of these people have watched clips where they have sold their land and come to lease land in the northern region or buy land in the northern region. Where do you want them to go to? Because you're asking that they have to have an exit permit. 2, the cows have to be moved between 8 and 6 p.m. Really, these are animals with temperatures we have during the day.
First of all, some people are asking that these people who are marauding everywhere, where do they come from? That's a fundamental question that must be answered. The second one is that when a movement creates a conflict, then the government is duty bound to find out what the conflict is and must have a mechanism of resolving the conflict. This movement, this migration by the Balaalo, actually is being termed by government, that's what Honorable Mona told me, and many people in the north, that is an invasion. It borders on being an invasion.
But
because this is a movement which has taken place before the issues of land were resolved after the war. You know that there's been a war in the northern Uganda, not only in Acholi, West Nile, Lango region, where people were displaced. And the land ownership in northern Uganda was and has been traditional, customary land, where land ownership is communal. But because many elders died in the camps, there are a few selected individuals who were land in the families who knew about leasing. They acquired, some of them, that's what Dr. Mona said, some of the people have acquired land titles fraudulently, and they have completely gone to interfere with the way of life in northern Uganda, and it's breeding conflict, which can breed something bigger than just ordinary conflict. He has also talked of the levels of impunity that have been reported in northern Uganda because of those guidelines which the president had given earlier. where people were supposed to fence off certain land and demarcate it. But people went to fence off communal places like land, ways, I mean places of wells where people could go. People have offended the cultures of the people in northern Uganda. You find people bathing at watering places and the wells. And when they talk about them, that becomes offensive. Actually, Dr. Omona talked of the security forces, some security forces in northern Uganda, being compromised to the level that when the local people go to complain, actually they turn against them and get arrested because of either the relationship between the Balaalo and the people, the enforcers of the law. So the matter is so complicated that if it is not well handled by government, it can turn into something more detrimental. Government did suspend the implementation of this executive order in 2003 because of the
foot and mouth disease. And the president said if the cows are moved, they can easily come and exterminate the herds in the other parts of the country where the cows will go. They said, can we do an intervention so that we vaccinate the cows? And once we have enough vaccines, the cows have been vaccinated, then the order can be implemented. But over this period, a lot seems to have happened that now it forces government to say, let them move. Their ownership of the land will remain, but the land matters will be sorted after they have moved. That is the position I got from Dr. Omona about this matter. Daniel, let me come to you. You are at the helm of this as the media coordinator of the association there. What is the historical undertones for your movement there? When did it happen, and why is there so much facade about this whole thing?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Nyangweso and the team here. And I'm happy that I found the spokesperson, the patriotic since your MPship time. And I'm happy that I found a Muvandimwe here and Madam here whom you told she's a doctor, professor, maybe. I had asked the academia to do research about it. Somebody from, I think, economics had called me. To me, it's unfortunate. I found myself in the war as a baby in NRA when I don't know why I was there. And this is exactly, we are just being targeted because, and I know maybe the president is watching, and maybe Dr. Mona, who was his PPS, is watching. They know that this, until there is a national dialogue to sort out a lot of anger, rage down there, there will be no peace. Because the truth of the matter, media, UBC, your government media house, lead the team of the media verification team. Go on the ground and find out those who sold us land. It's not true at all. It's not true. Those are falsehoods.
How did you find yourselves there?
Excuse me, I know you come from the east, isn't it?
Yes.
I come from the west, he comes from the east. How did we find ourselves here? Simply forces of demand and supply. Me, the other day, and it's not right, Mr. Mona knows that what he's saying is not right. He has his own personal issues against our ethnicity issues. Nothing. Because if he's saying that, he would have invited us. We called him to meet him. Since he refused, he denied us audience. He has been moving around the whole of northern Uganda, mobilizing in their own language. We also, the project affected the persons, and we also, were we not supposed to be consulted? Project Is there any project that the government program that is affecting affected persons not involved? So the truth of the matter is, Omona himself and those he has behind, we know them. He has issues. He's a land grabber. Go to nowhere. If we are to handle land grabbing, the first case would be Dr. Mona. But a person like me, I'm a victim because I have this endangered face. Because the president, I share the same face with the president.
Daniel, you're trivializing this conversation.
It is purely tribal.
To ethnicity.
Yes.
But the land in the north, 76% of it is customary. You are not giving us a historical of how you moved there. You are accused of wielding guns while moving your animals through people's crops there. Also, something that Honorable talked about, the cultural norms on that side are completely different. How did you get land if 76% of the land there is customary?
Thank you. That's why actually the fourth estate of government, would the media, how I wish, let me give you the perspective. Me, I don't need a parish development model of you give me pasture and water, that's it, because I have the science. That's why our president always talks about retiring to his cows. That's what he knows. So you tell me that there is land in Zambia, for example, there is pasture, there is water, I have the science, and it's illegal, I will go there and acquire. This is how we started. We were told there's no-go areas, actually, where there were no dangerous areas during the Konye War, where there was nodding disease, for example, in Atiak, in Amur, and Balaalo in Guru district. Bushy areas, no-go areas. So we are told there is land there, good pasture, good water. Then we go. Then you approach the, and we are led by the Acholi brokers, mostly, northern brokers, whether West Nile, and most is a lot in the Acholi sub-region.
The three guidelines, before I get to Honorable Mbide, were fencing in 4 lanes, water within your pasture. The fourth one was to ensure that you get land in rightful order.
I mean,
have these guidelines been adhered to by the group of people you lead?
Actually, beyond, for example, beyond, and we were waiting for a joint verification team to verify the presidential guidelines.
You already had a verification team led by Honorable Akol.
No, it did not come. It did not happen. It did not come until then we had later, we know, that later money was released for the verification to the Northern Uganda ministry. Instead of coming and doing a joint verification, impartial verification exercise, whether we complied with the presidential directives, I mean, we got shocked to see a press conference with the division commanders and the Minister of Northern Uganda that we are given 14 days.
Are you leaving tomorrow?
I mean, we are victims. The president, if he doesn't chase us, the way it happened in Burisa, the way it happened in 2018, Burisa, it was implemented by our tribe mates again, in Nyefuza and Keihura. The way in 2018, again, our tribe mates with the fighter jet, he would be accused of segregation, favoring his tribe mates. So we shall be victimized again because we are between the war and the hard place. We have nowhere to go.
Let me come to Honorable Mbide. Honorable Mbide, Article 29 allows any Ugandan to move freely and settle anywhere. Article 237 gives us the tenure of land in this country, customary being one of them. Where is the problem in this matter?
The problem is, of course, there is it is a governance issue. When you look at the chronology of letters written by the head of state on the same matter, and you have definitely adumbrated to part of what it is. the chronology in 2021 that required them to fence, identification of water, and making sure that their animals do not encroach, and being guided as Bafuruchi, then followed by the executive order. Now, that alone in total ensures that somebody buys land, authenticates the purchase, establishes infrastructure that is capable of definitely establishing that person as a substantive cattle keeper, and clearly that includes now authority to invest. Now that is by the president, and I have not even looked at the law as you have cited it. Today, if the 4 guidelines that have clearly described these, of course, so-called Balaalo, as now free investors in the dairy farming, are now accompanied by a 5th directive of departure. And for me, I think I think this government is telling me that they have got a very great sense of humor. Now, let me tell you, the laws of Uganda, as you have cited, now including the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, guarantee economic rights to everybody. I have looked at purchase agreements because at the same time I first thought that probably these people are just encroachers. They first were referred to as nomads, that we are chasing cows and definitely now unruly in such a way that they were not guiding their own animals into other people's fields. Until it was discovered that actually these are purchasers of land, of all tenure systems that are available. Now, the manner in which they buy their pieces of land, I have looked at agreements, I have looked at ownership processes. The compliance includes Local Council 1, Local Council 2, Local Council 3, DISO, RDC, even the percentage payments. Yes, the percentage payments include a percentage payment to the road. Now, in addition now to the substantive vendor. Now, when you buy land, the laws of Uganda accord you the right to quiet enjoyment of that land. Because these are not licenses. Bare licenses are those that can occupy land at the whims of the owner. But these, if they become lessees, if they become substantive purchasers owning in the tenure systems that are preferable, these are owners of land available to, and definitely to quiet enjoyment. Now, I have looked at some of the agreements. They even talk about indemnity. In the event that a sale of such property mysteriously culminates into an impossibility, then you have to indemnify the buyer. How do you tell somebody that bought land, accommodates his cattle on the same piece of land, bought the size, because where are they going to keep their cows? And you say the issues of ownership shall be sorted. Now that is an illegality. We do not have to, we can't accompany government on a voyage of illegalities. Government is powerful, yes, because it is in power. But the people that are led, I think they have got rights that should be respected. There are land ownerships by companies like Machame. You know, he's fearing to state things. Machame in Nyamuchina in Inoya. Who owns those companies? Some of these are not even the peremptory Balaalo that you're filing it to. These are past family members. So for me, I think for avoidance of escalating this matter, a lot of stuff has to be done. One, verification of ownership of these pieces of land. Ascertainment of land use. Because in the beginning it was about indiscipline. Now it is about substantial. You know, you cannot chase Ugandans. Land is a factor of production. And all the factors of production, land, labor, entrepreneurship, and what? And capital. They each carry a price. They can even be exported. And these are things that, but after somebody passing on, we call it consideration in law. And you're a lawyer. The act of forbearance, what have you ceded in exchange for what you have obtained? So if there has been a substantive exchange for value, you cannot turn around, even if you are such a government, and tell me that for me what I ceded in exchange for this piece of land is actually negligible, please go tomorrow, then you include the soldiers. Some of the soldiers are the same land owners. I am beginning to get a problem. Is it the possibility that they are being flushed out for new owners to turn up? Is it really correct that Dr. Omuna, who has a house in Buganda, continues to state that he himself does not allow anybody to possess a house in his own area of origin? Are we going to run a country like that? Or is this a country which is a free market economy?
Honorable, before I come to Professor,
Yes.
a twofold question. Article 29 and Article 237, one on land tenure, the other one on the rights, were they presumptive in trying to solve what is now a lacuna in the law, especially if I can move from wherever I am to go and settle wherever you, like you have mentioned?
Yes, but you see,
And is it resolving this problem?
tenure systems are just systems of ownership. Now, ownership that includes the transfer from one ownership to another, all that government needs to look at is authenticity and bona fide purchases. You get the point. There is no problem between whether one is a mile owner and one is a Chivanja holder. For example, in Uganda, because that was sorted by the Land Amendment Act 2010. So what has been sorted in terms of land owned by clans, when a clan leader has himself appended the signature and obtained the consideration for the purchase that has gone on, what happens? So for me, I think even the law as it is, there is no problem. The problem is where government now assumes, and I have seen things happening in such a way. We have looked at if you look at the authority of Campbell versus Republic of Zimbabwe, you find that I think Mugabe should be credited for trying as much as practicable to solve the land question in Zimbabwe. In Uganda here, although obviously when that matter was concluded, it almost led to the collapse of the SADC court. But I can tell you safely, land is a factor of production. It can be sold. It attracts a price. If it is rented, the price is in terms of rent. If it is sold, substantive value for money.
Honorable Mbide,
Yes.
something that Daniel mentioned, ethnicity. Uganda was brought together by different states, Bunyoro, Ankole, Buganda. Is this fragile myth of Uganda being held together, and now we're beginning to see the fractures of this framework politically of a constitution?
One time I had an argument with His Excellency, and he almost even warned me. When I told him that actually our constitution is one of the rare constitutions in the world that it determines citizenship on account of ethnicity. You don't ethnicize a legal matter when you know that ethnicity is extraterritorial. Now, citizenship is intraterritorial. So you cannot determine citizenship using international law. You use the municipal law, the laws of the country. So those that put it in the constitution erred. Now here, we are talking of citizenship. We are talking of ethnicity. In a country where ethnicity actually has no legal value. It does not legal value in terms of administration. There is no ethnic region that has got potential government power and authority. These are all, I think they are culture in nature. And for purpose of nomenclature and sundry. Now, first of all, the people referred to naturally, commonly as Balaalo, some of them are Baganda, others are Banyarwanda, others are Banyankole, others are from Bunyoro, I think, Banyolo. Yeah. When you look at, so Uganda, when you look back and you begin moving, that is where you will go. It is beginning to sound to me like Uganda is going backwards. Okay. I thought we had transcended ethnicity. but now, if our economics is going to be determined in terms of which ethnic region, ethnic community is not allowed and permitted here, in my opinion, I think we are failing on state formation.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Professor, I know we have talked about ethnicity here numerous times and asked ourselves the question, what can pull this country together? But when you hear the conversations, Daniel said, because I have this face. When you hear Honorable Odongo Oto, he's saying the Balaalo must leave Acholi land. Why is social cohesion failing in the northern region?
Thank you very much, Timothy. I'm not sure whether it's failing, but I think part of the problem is our failure to pay attention to history. First and foremost, as you have acknowledged and everyone has acknowledged, Uganda is a diverse community. I think in the constitution we had like 56 ethnic groups, but I know we are much more than that. So that is one. Number two, historically, Ugandans have moved. They have moved from one place to another. Movements used to occur even before colonialism. And movements continued occurring after colonialism. I think, I don't know his name, but he said we are here because we all came here. Forces of demand and supply. People move because of economics, people move because of cultural matters, they go and get married. People move because they have to go to school. So people have always moved. But when you go back to the area which is contested, particularly the area around Lake Choga, cattle keepers have always gone there from Western Uganda. It is not the first time. I remember even the late General, I think, Eli Tumwine, who's talked about his mother having been buried there because they lived there at a certain time. So these movements have always occurred. These communities have been in Eastern Uganda. They have been, in the Teso region. So these things have always been there. The question is, why is it a problem now? And I think one of the things we also need to pay attention to is, when we were colonized, the colonial government never paid attention to animal husbandry. They had come for cotton and coffee. What they wanted were those kinds of things, cotton, coffee, and the extractable materials. You have a lot of colonial history of fighting cattle keeping in Karamoja and wherever else it existed. How the cattle tax in Karamoja and the price of cattle was much more than in any other areas. And why the taxation, for example, in Karamoja was meant to be high so that they sell off more cattle. When that failed, the colonial government would just burn the grass so as to make animal husbandry impossible. When you read all around the African continent, people who keep cattle, like we do a lot of work with One Health projects, people who keep cattle are considered the most vulnerable people because the governments on the African continent have failed to pay attention to that, we call it transhuman kind of lifestyle. So they have all failed to pay attention to these mobile migrant populations of cattle keepers. The assumption is that everyone should settle down and do agriculture. Maybe you do it through the 4-acre model and through many other things. But you see, when you go to the identity question, to what extent does a cattle keeper want to become an agriculturalist? You see, people don't just wake up one morning and they are cattle keepers and they are agriculturists. They have a whole cultural history that is based on a particular way of life. So if they are to be settled, a process has to be undertaken which pays attention to these identity issues. So you don't just wake up one morning and say this should stop. But the other question we should ask ourselves is, if these migrations have been there, why are they now an issue in northern Uganda? A few things have occurred in the last 3 decades.
Yes.
One, we underwent neoliberalism. And with the neoliberalism, there was this whole attack on traditional ways of farming and peasantry and modernization. So areas where cattle keepers traditionally practiced transhumance agriculture, in that you'd start from, let's say, Chiruhura, and you go with the cattle up to Serere and back, and in the process, the animals are fertilizing. That whole cattle corridor, it's not called cattle corridor by accident. The animals moved up and down, but in the process, they left behind cow dung, and by the time they came back, there was pasture and everything. And that kind of lifestyle was sustainable, by the way, in its form of up and down. But what has happened ever since we went neoliberal? The land market opened up and people went for direct private ownership of land. Why? Yes. Because they are putting up big farms. Yes. So if you go in the cattle corridor, the Nakasongola corridor, people have 10 square miles of farmland. They're trying to build the kinds of Texan kind of ranches kind of thing. But the question you're not asking yourself, what happens to the people who have been surviving sustainably in this corridor. They are being pushed. No one plans for them. Okay, so some have been pushed into the east. Some have been pushed into the north. Others are being pushed into West Nile. And all we are doing is we are issuing public orders for them to go back to where. So I think we need to pay attention to this country in its diversity. What are the different ways of life of these people? So that you develop all. You develop a matoke farmer and a Malewa farmer in Mount Elgon in as much as you're also developing a cattle keeper. So there's this neoliberalism. In where they are coming from, the land has been zoned off, fenced off to create big farms. Where they are going after the war, people also started selling. And I know we have said, you see, they are violating the actual way of life. What we need to know is Ugandan land is 80% customary. So even the land people are buying in Uganda, they are buying customary land. The land being bought in Busoga and in the eastern everywhere is customary land. Why is this a problem? Of course, we know that out of tragedies like wars, especially if there has been a 26-year war, you have collective trauma, which creates collective bonding. So there's a heightened sense of who are we within this larger political whole called Uganda. So you have that heightened awareness of your identity as a people who have suffered this much for this period of time. But as that is also occurring, when northern Uganda became peaceful, it was not spared the neoliberalism that had ravaged the rest of the country. And one of the things which has gone onto the chopping board is land. People have needs. They are coming out of a war. They need health care. The health care is privatized. They need education. It's privatized. They need this. What do they have to sell? They have to sell land. We have done research in northern Uganda, not about land, about other things like health, about gender and the rest. And the issue of land comes up. And how is it coming up? It's one of the biggest sources of intra-family conflict, because the sons in the family want to buy, the mothers don't want the land to sell, the mothers don't want to sell. So there's a lot of selling of land to the highest bidder. So it's not that groups of people are arriving and then they're grabbing land. It is that there's also a great demand, a great push to sell land.
Okay.
And all of this, those are neoliberal forces, that things which were not tradable before are now tradable. There's a land market in this country. Whether it is customary or whatever, it's just that if it's customary land, it will be cheaper than if it's titled land. But 80% of this country is actually under customary tenure. So now then you bring in the constitutional issues of aliens. You know, if you have a constitution which doesn't talk of aliens and it talks about anyone in Uganda will be free to move and settle and live peacefully, at what stage do you determine that that person is an alien? Okay? If the person is a criminal who has stolen land, it has to be dealt with by the kind of laws. But if this person was sold land and now people are backtracking and thinking there's a problem, then that is another issue which has to be resolved. But also another thing we have to pay attention to is the politicization of identity that's coming with this. Of course, if you come as a cattle keeper and you come in numbers to a settled community of agriculturists, you look different. And because you look different, you'll actually attract attention. And if you are in many numbers, that will be a problem. But as I said, we need to go back to history. It's not the first time people with cattle are arriving in those regions. And it is also not the first migration that's causing a crisis. We had the Bafuruchi when the Bachiga went to Bunyoro.
Yes.
And actually, they're still there. There were no executive orders.
Actually, Chivari had an LC5.
Who
the president told to step
down. Yeah, but you see, you didn't see an executive order. And actually, there's still very many Bachiga in Bunyoro. So we have to actually address this country in its complete whole. That it is full of diverse tribes and ways of life, diverse ethnicities. And you're not going to wish away ethnicity, Timothy, if it is the only currency of identity we have. Reason being, we have failed to generate a national identity. And we have been here before saying national identities don't occur by accident. Okay. It has to be a concerted effort. So we have to pay attention to the different processes that have affected this country: colonialism, currently neoliberalism, and the post-war effort.
Thank you. Comment from Honorable Mbide, then we'll take a break.
And for me, except if we want Uganda to qualify,
to be taken back to Lancaster in order to learn how to live together
Yes.
as the former ethnicities. Uganda needs to develop a master plan on land management that considers its inelasticity.
Yes.
That land is inelastic, while actually the demand for land is an elastic framework. The demand increases without the size of land increasing.
Yes.
So we need a master plan.
And
when you look at what
population.
Ghana did, in fact, even burial grounds are actually district-based. In Ghana, you do not just bury anybody wherever you want. The district should develop public burial grounds. There must be now proper and substantive land management. Where a government fails to do so, it begins now to visit that failure onto the substantive individual private purchasers of land that have actually obtained the land in exchange for the value of such land given to the sellers.
Thank you. Let me read some feedback that has come through so that we can take a break. Thank you for the show. We started with the rest and finding ourselves here. Okay, thank you very much for that message. Onzima Albert from Arua. Thank you for the great leaders in the country and the great leaders in the NRM. May you go and ask to present the removal of taxes in all sectors in the income and other taxes to free up at least for 1 year and 6 months to make ordinary people to become at that level. Okay, thank you very much for your message. The Balaalo question. Someone starts with condolences to Captain Francis Babu and says, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the passing, but with the deep saddening, we also want to question this Balaalo question and ask ourselves, why did the Balaalo leave Bulisa? How did they come to the north? Okay. Teacher Simo Julius also asks a question. The Balaalo may not leave northern Uganda when they are still in power, when they move carrying guns, even when some of the seniors have camped there in the north. Okay, interesting comment there. Good evening, panelists. This is Chibet Rajab from Kapchora. According to me, Mr. President's order does not favor all, because this land in Uganda belongs to all, as one has a right to own land anywhere in the country, provided he or she gets the land in the right procedure. It is not only the Balaalo being in the north, there's also other tribes in the area there. Okay? My answer to the question of the Balaalo is just to promote serious intermarriages between the Balaalo and the natives. This will de-escalate the matter. This is Joshua from Kasese. Someone else sends a question to Honorable Dombo here and says, Honorable Dombo should explain to us why they left Bulisa, and also, is the NRM doing enough by just chasing people? Is that a solution? Okay. Yes. The final one is that, thank you for the show. My question is on tribe of the Balaalo. Where do they originate from? Which country is their origin? Let them be led back to their origin homes. There is no land in Acholi for Balaalo. We call it Ingom Kwaro, land for our ancestors, not ours. Let them move back to their original homes. We do not want war again, like we were chased from Teso. We are going to send them away tomorrow. Balaalo must go home. Who told us to sell that land? Very interesting messages. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we diffuse this issue to its end.
Here's your chance to win school fees for your child for a whole year. Just pay school fees using Momo. Dial *165 *80#. Select option 2 for school pay. Select option 1 to pay school fees. Enter the student number and amount and approve the transaction. You will now enter the draw to win school fees.
The government's core mandate is to maintain law and order, safeguard citizens' rights, and provide essential public services.
Remember, one of the pillars of the roadmap is innovation and entrepreneurship.
There has been this question of how are you protecting our indigenous seed?
There's going to be a toll project that answers somebody's question.
For the past 20 weeks, the front bench has brought you insightful discussions on governance, security, healthcare, justice and commerce.
Why do you go through this complicated procedure, involve the lawyers? You bring the case against him, the judge will hear you out and pass judgment, and you're out of court in record time.
We remain committed to keeping you informed and engaged on key national matters.
So these are huge, these are powerful organizations which now Uganda chairs. Why don't you come together?
If we haven't migrated to the e-card because of various reasons, including that not all the people of Uganda have smartphones.
You can sit in your house, apply for a passport.
If you have a Ugandan who has a successful logistics firm in the US, it means he can come to Uganda and do a lot more.
Now airing every Monday at 8:30 p.m. with me, Jethro Kasaiji, your interface with the government only on your public broadcaster, UBC, Inspiring Uganda.
This is a short story about you. No, I don't mean that this is you. No, this is not you. This is me. Of course, this can't be you. This can't be you because you think these things of touring Uganda are for rich people. You think these touring things are for people celebrating anniversaries. This can't be you. Because you think to enjoy wildlife, you have to first put in a leave request at work. Chimpanzees are just a 30-minute boat ride from Entebbe. And you get a chance to feed, name a chimpanzee, or even adopt a chimpanzee. You can even actually use this as a rehearsal to see if you can really provide food for another living thing. God gave us a beautiful country on a budget. We don't have to fly there, we are already here. This is ours, uniquely ours.
In a nation hungry for truth, a world where every story matters, there exists a beacon of trust and reliability. For decades, they've been our voice and our window to the world, holding the mirror of our history. With 4 TV stations and 11 radio channels spanning 27 languages, they stand as guardians of information, defenders of truth. With Mascari Heritage Advantage, they uphold every citizen's right to reliable and free information. Their archived stories shaped our past and illuminate our present. Yet now, as new challenges arise and the world evolves, their mission faces its greatest test yet. Be part of our journey and let's navigate the unknown, uncover the untold, and safeguard our future together. Tune into your public broadcaster, for it is the intersection of trust and truth. Because to UBC, your story, and every voice matters. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Welcome back from that quick commercial break here on Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. Even as we get into this last leg of the show, we're discussing the Balaalo dilemma, or the herdsmen that are in the northern region there. The thing is that tomorrow is the last day that they need to be able to leave the north to find another way. And they're given just between 8 and 6 p.m. to be able to do that. But in the studio I have Professor Sarah Sali, Honorable Mukasambide, Daniel Bareche, and I am also joined by Honorable Lumala Dombo, and we're discussing this question there. Let me read some feedback, then I get to the panel there. Quick feedback that has come through. Good evening, Timothy. The Balaalo issue is a very sensitive and delicate matter, especially in Acholi, when education, health, and other social services are made very expensive to the people and their children, left with no land to sell because you have no other factor of production to make there. I think this is the point that Honorable Mbide was making. To me, it's manipulative. The privileged buyers, vulnerable sellers, economics does not work here. It has to be the goodwill and include everyone there. This is George Anyuari who is giving that. Real shame Real shame to be able to, good evening UBC, this is Godfrey Mugume. I wish to ask the question, if I bought land from the family and all signed for me, and the local government was there, and I have a stamp from the Ministry of Lands also proving, is it possible to buy that land? Why didn't the government or the Ministry of Local Government allow that to happen? Why didn't they tell us that the Acholi land is not for sale? Because these local government people have their own agenda. I want the public to know that the issue is not about the kind of land tenure or Balaalo, the group of people that is there. They are politically greedy, and that is why we can see the rise in this time of campaign. The same way we found ourselves in the Buganda, where we have found ourselves in Acholi. Really, it is a shame and unbelievable, for instance, to let this happen, okay? UBC, thank you for the show. Since the government does not allow Balaalo people in the north and West Nile, what is the government's plan for the people, since they're asking them to leave and they're also Ugandans? I think that's to Honorable Dombo. How can we coexist with the Balaalo irrespective of the places they come from? Why are we chasing them away? Before the government chases the Balaalo, let it also have a reallocation plan to stay with their animals. This is Adama from West Nile. Finally, for this break, thank you. My question to the tribe there, okay, that one I read before. Honorable Dombo, let me come back to you. This seems like a knee-jerk reaction by government on responding to a matter that can be resolved there. You're saying the people have to first leave, then you do the verification process. But also, what does it look like since you now have a new love-found relationship with northern Uganda, especially that some have vowed not to vote for the NRM in this current election coming if the Balaalo or the herdsmen do not leave?
But Nyangweso, government in dealing with matters of social stability in the country considers many factors. They are legitimate bona fide purchasers of land by the Balaalo. But this happened at a time when the people of northern Uganda lost their animals during the war, and government has not come up with a good program in order to ensure that they reinstate that economic activity within to the people of northern Uganda. When the politics comes in, some people in northern Uganda, you remember, land is very emotive. And at one time, the likes of Honorable Donga Otos and the other members used to say government was planning to take over land from northern Uganda. At the time, at the peak of FDC, that was the only issue in northern Uganda. People were in camps, and the only accusation that government, that the politicians in northern Uganda had against government or against NRM were that we are going to northern Uganda to steal land. Now, when the Balaalo go to use the economy to buy land, and buying land, some of the less privileged, who are vulnerable, now to even empowers the politicians the more, that actually this is the execution of the plan that the politicians used to talk about. It therefore becomes incumbent on government to find out how best can you ensure that there is social order in a community amidst the desire to create economic empowerment. Perhaps in future, government may have to come up with quotas on how many cows somebody may own. Because you just can't come because you have capacity and you have the will, you can have come with 10,000 cows and overtake a whole sub-county because you have the capacity and you have the economy. It could be that will call for what my brother Onarambide was talking about, that a master plan on land management and land use.
Yes.
Secondly, isn't it time for us to begin exploring the use of modern farming mechanisms so that we see this method of these people marauding around with their cows? They chase you from Tanzania, you are in some place in Ankole, they are chasing you. You are running to Bunyoro, they are chasing you. You go to northern Uganda, you're creating havoc. How best can we deal with this issue without distorting the social order and to create stability? Because government has to confront this matter, whether they like it or not. Because it can end up into a very big conflict and can distort social order and retrogress, take us backwards as a country to even periods before colonialism here in Uganda. So those two issues, that there was cattle rustling in northern Uganda, and I remember very well when I was in parliament, some officers of government, UPDF, were accused of rustling in Teso sub-region. There is a time when there was an outbreak of a disease here in western Uganda, and one of the generals was accused of stealing cows from Teso sub-region and coming and creating the same problem that I've been talking about. I'll not go into mentioning names, but this created one of the hottest debates that we had, and it is common knowledge here in Uganda. So the president, I think, is between a hard rock and because he must resolve it. I've seen my brother here saying that his face looks like that of President Museveni. I don't think Obona is chasing you because your faces look different. Honorable Obona is just doing government work because he's been appointed by the minister to be a minister. The executive order was not signed by Obona. The executive order was signed by President Museveni, who has the powers to do that.
Could it be that the president got wrong intelligence?
This is it. Of course. He's being intentionally
misinformation. Because, Honorable Dombo, the sensitivity, especially when you hear some of the messages and you hear Daniel, there are undertones that we're not paying attention to, undercurrents there. The sensitivity of this matter needs a surgery that is slower and pays attention to the different facets that are there. You are shooting first and aiming later.
I've really listened to President Museveni dissect the history of Africa, even far beyond the times of colonialism.
Sorry to cut you short.
I don't think there is any Ugandan.
Daniel, let me come to you.
I don't think there is any Ugandan who has the level of knowledge and information about these historical interactions between communities and tribes, and who is well versed with what has happened in northern Uganda. Actually, when I tried to do a bit of consultation, not only with the ministers when I came in, but I rang a number of people, basically on the ground, find out what exactly is happening and what are the nature of complaints. These are some of them, let me tell you. First of all, I told you that this is a post-war situation when the people of northern Uganda feel that they were disadvantaged at the time of the economic exchange, which my brother is talking about. This is what I found out. But also, they are talking about arrogance and impunity, and the use of force, that they even castrate people's bulls for those of the people of Acholi. That is something that is the areas that have been reserved for watering. And this is what one of the elders told me from Acholi, that there was an effort to teach the people of Acholi on how to live in harmony with the cattle keepers. And this person was saying the training actually should have been teaching the cattle keepers how to live in harmony with their Acholis. But now it was the other way around. So this is something.
You talk about an issue of them using force, but there are also threats. Honorable Dombo, I don't think government is seeing the magnitude of this challenge from all facets. He is naming ethnic lines. They are naming anarchy in case this is not resolved. And government is picking a gun and pointing and saying, we shall shoot first and ask questions later, leave. Really, is this resolving the problem that is here, especially with its undertones, that have land and ethnicity to it?
First of all, nobody is being deprived of their land. The decision of government will have implications because, especially if the people from the Balaalo, where they are being pushed to go, there is not enough room for them to live with their cows. That will have implications. Secondly, it is possible that there could have been individuals in northern Uganda who fraudulently sold their land, and therefore, it may call in something for, calling in government for compensation. So this is something that may have to be, a study will have to be undertaken. And it's not reparations, but if the Balaalo parted with their cows or land, or money to buy land, then there must be an equitable compensation for them not to lose on what they have put. But we need, everybody will have to modify the way they live. Secondly, we shall have come in with very strong regulations on how much people can buy and acquire, because you can easily get a community going and buying off a whole district. And you make the local people landless because they are vulnerable and poor, and then you take over because you are poor and you have been coming in. This creates social instability. That is the place you saw what happened in Bunyoro. In Bunyoro, it was not only an issue of the politicians taking over. I'll give you an example. When they went for the NRM primaries, and the Bachiga, the Bafurukas, they were being referred to in Bunyoro, they went to look for land, but they ended up participating in politics and taking over leadership positions. Now I saw my brothers from Bunyoro who ran to the NRM Electoral Commission to come and bring their cases. One of them coming and saying, by the way, now you run from Bachiga in Bunyoro, you go to the Electoral Commission, you get another Mchiga. Because Ona Rugunda was the chairman of the NRM Electoral Commission. That is how challenging this issue can be, and you need to come in to provide resolutions that people must see and are tangible. The president was forced to ask somebody who had been legitimately elected through a process to say, can you step aside, so that we create social stability and social harmony. So this matter can only be resolved through dialogue, but it has potentials of it deteriorating into a major conflict if it is not well handled. The Balaalo have their legitimate right because they are bona fide purchasers of land, but where you buy from people who are vulnerable and where the advantages are not the same, then government will have to create an equilibrium so that there is social harmony and political stability.
Daniel, tomorrow is the day. You have mentioned ethnicity, you have mentioned economic forces that drove you there, which really makes sense. How do you hope to have dialogue to resolve this matter? Because one, you'll be losing out economically, but also two, there are also sentiments in ethnicity here. How do you plan to resolve this? And is it possible?
I think you did a wonderful job to call me on behalf of the
community.
That cattle keeping. By the way, first of all, we are not nomads. We are not even Balaalo. I need to first correct this, that we are cattle keepers. Actually, we are cattle keeper investors. We invest. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. We are.
Balaalo is
yes.
a reference to an economic.
You see, before I was born, even my father, my late father was maybe a nomadist who would do what you are saying from place to place. No, we just go there to fatten, sell. Fatten, sell. So to me, my humble request, whoever, previously in 2023, I made an passionate appeal, and I still make this appeal to the president as the head of state, as the commander-in-chief, and the chief executive office of a country called Uganda, told it, and called his colleagues, the other two heads of government, the Right Honorable Speaker, and the Chief Justice. Good enough, he has his concerns as a Choli native. Well, they can provide money. We know that they had provided 2 billion to Northern Uganda Ministry to do verifications. But because of a lot of deep-seated anger of not being compensated and all that, so we are saying, let these cows, I lost 200, many people lost. Instead of making people poorer and poorer, when we are saying, you know, whatever of NRM, let's turn these cows into a compensation to Northern Uganda. Instead of chasing them away, they die. They don't attract any value to us, the owners, even to the Northerners. That's number one. They can turn them into. We had even engaged the Kabaka of Northern Uganda and say, can we team up with you?
The Paramount Chief.
Yes, and we teach, because later in 2018, the late Professor J.J. Otim, a veterinary professor, who was a senior presidential advisor on agriculture for Northern Uganda, he wrote, at least he presented to us, saying, I advised the president that your presence here is so good, is bringing back the cattle keeping culture. Because what is bringing this animosity, there were a lot of cows in Northern Uganda. So many think we took their short-horned cows and brought their long-horned cows. So me, I'm of the view that they can sit and turn those animals in Northern Uganda into a compensation fund. And we even bring the culture of cattle keeping back, so that we leave it in the Northern Uganda economy, because we had boosted that economy seriously. I know when you check well, Atiak sub-county, which was Bushi and Balaalo, now they are town councils where we went. So business-wise, we've boosted the economy. But now, instead of saying they will be poor again, because we've been a market, and we shall be poor, and there will be still, when you talk of social stability, just prepare yourself for, as SEC, and I am saying, prepare yourself for even political instability and economic instability, because you make us poor, I think, and the president knows, and this crisis management is not long-lasting. So national dialogue is the way to go. Ukoro Dongoto, it's unfortunate that I was told the Professor Latigo is here, is not here. It's unfortunate that Odongoto is not here. Because what they talk about is, personally, Odongoto, what he talks about, to some extent, he speaks his mind, but it's not true. What Dr. Mono is telling the president is not true.
Like, what are you saying is not true? What are they saying that you're saying is not true?
That that we are in this sprint over, we are castrating people, that we are all that bad. That's not true. They call themselves actually landowners and livestock farmers association. Those who sold us, they are not complaining. They are not. They are not. This is purely politics.
And you mentioned something very valid with the politics. Before I get to Honorable Mbide, what internal mechanisms within your association have you put in place to be able to resolve some of these allegations they have made? The allegations that you are buying land at nominal value, either 500,000 per acre, that you are wielding guns around. How have you tried to resolve some of these internal contradictions within the association so that you bring out an image like you're trying to create the social stability that Honorable Dombo is talking about?
Thank you so much. Number one, we team up with security to ensure that any security issue, we are there to support, because whether safety of anything or indiscipline of any kind, we ensure that the law takes place. That's why we actually working together hand in hand with actual landowners and livestock farmers association who sold us land, who know that these are Kampala people, TV people who don't know what is on the ground. So in terms of integration, we are part of the community support. If I found here my friend Honorable Anthony Okor, he would tell you that the other time we contributed to his function in Amur, in his constituency, where the Right Honorable Speaker was. So we are part, integration we are part, in terms of disciplining our errant members, they can, because any society has errant members, and that's the purpose of the law. Police is there, and those other fabrications are not true. So to me, instead of breaking down the economy, because if I know people of Southern Sudan will cry. They were taking a lot of milk from us. There were milk coolers in the place. So the northern Uganda is going to collapse. The economy is going to collapse again. We shall be poorer, and we shall be angry still. We shall be angry still. So the president is not solving the problem. The solution is national dialogue. Being honest to one another. When we talk of selling the land at a price, we are all in Uganda here. We can be honest how much we sold a person, like how much you bought your first plot in Kampala, and how much is it now. We found in 2018, when we were chased using a fighter jet, the land was being donated free of charge. Later it went for 100. But as we talk, it's over, even going to 2 million an acre. So what are we talking about? Demand and supply. Like in Uganda, like in Western Uganda, like in Eastern Uganda. So they would allow just peaceful coexistence and through national dialogue.
Honorable Mbide, he talks about peaceful coexistence, but he talks about the economy of the north, especially being affected on both milk and beef, because they fatten, and then South Sudan benefits.
Even we buy.
And that coexistence, how do we achieve meaningful and peaceful coexistence in this region, or in this country, to be exact?
Yes.
Because I know you also handle some other cases.
I do.
Yes.
And Uganda had successfully handled some import substitution with regards to milk-related products and all other products related to substantive manufacturing here in Uganda. The things that we used to import from Kenya, almost 60%, we had adopted import substitution. And in my opinion, Uganda was becoming a production economy. Now, part of the regions in Uganda that had become investment destinations, one for agriculture, and also in terms of course, agriculture in terms of dairy farming, including northern Uganda. Now, today, if you select, for example, that those that are investing in dairy farming should leave, those cattle rearing should leave, then in my opinion, the next item to target is going to be Atiak sugar, because all of them are land intensive. Now, let me tell you, my brother, what Uganda needs to develop are substantive policies like we had agreed with Honorable Dombo. I think we need a substantive master plan on land use, land management, land ownership, and all land in Uganda, because the historicity of land ownership is convoluted. It is not really something that anyone would be proud of. Since all Ugandans were taken to Lancaster to determine who should lead, if one person, because everybody in Uganda belongs to an ethnic community. Now, if one leader belongs to an ethnic community, it is going to be unlikely that it is allowed that some ethnic communities will now not allow anybody else to exist in their own sub-regions. Forces of demand and supply determine price, and price for each and everything, of all the factors of production. So without a substantive policy and control systems, you cannot say that sellers of services, of labor, of everything will definitely be, their prices will be determined in terms of supply and demand, but the sellers of land as a factor of production will be exempted from free market economy. That is an illegality. Uganda, we are guided by laws, and freedoms are sacrosanct under Chapter 4. So the president is being invited to a voyage of illegalities, and that is something we must guide him against. Until such a time that Uganda will have evolved a procedure that, for example, even categorizes how much land one would own for which amount of business, of which business. In Uganda here, almost every corridor now, you know, when you look at housing, because you see every area is now asking for a city, but people are not actually constructing anything in terms of the Urban Planning Act. You find that almost 70% of our houses are not in accordance to plans. And these are things that are not being explained to the Ugandans. Uganda needs to plan. Cities are constructed near water, but we still have NEMA officials that studied the archaic environmental scientific procedures to them, that instead, you know, when you look at France, for example, when you go to Amsterdam, you find buildings where we studied very long ago that water is a means of transport. You find a boat taking one from one shop to another. But in Uganda, you are told that constructing near water is actually environmentally unfriendly. So we have got countries which have got cities that are floating. But in Uganda, so Uganda, I think, is operating on an extensive amount of guesswork in terms of whatever we are doing. So we need master plans that will categorize and also zone businesses, land ownership pursuant to businesses, and land ownership is categorized into three major: urban land ownership, rural ownership, and something related to ecological and environmental. Uganda needs a substantive master plan on management, ownership, land use, and even pricing of the same, if we are to have economies that will flourish.
Thank you. Professor, coming to you lastly but not least, how do we insulate such issues from ethnicity and politics and get to the real root cause to resolve them?
Thank you, Timothy. Insulating them for now is going to be problematic because those are the only identifiers we have allowed to thrive. Number two, we need to understand that there is increasing population, and this increasing population is going to have to go somewhere. So like I think Honorable Mukasambide has said, we need to rethink the laws around land, because soon you'll be told, you see, you don't need Bagiso in Sebei, then you don't need Sebei Sabins in Karamoja, then you don't need Batoro in Uganda, then you don't need Baganda in Busoga. So there's an increasing population, and with that we shall need to stay somewhere. But also, how do we come across, what do we do about identity and politics? First of all, these things inherently are not bad things. There's nothing wrong with someone celebrating their culture and their way of life and eating what they want to eat and trading the way they want to trade. Just like there's nothing wrong with people taking over leadership of a place. The problem is when these, which actually are progressive forces, are tied to traditional forms of ethnicity, which is tied to the land, that your identity only comes from the land. And you know, we've been told land is fixed, land is a geographical space. So for example, if you live at Choliland and you come to Kampala, if you're born and raised in Kampala, then what are you? So we want to live traditional ways in modern times. And I think that's where the problem is. So one, we need to find a way of coexisting. And the best way to coexist is to build a national identity. I've always said here that if you read the history, there were actually attempts at nation building in the past, whereby government policies would be discussed in town halls. Children from this area had to study in the other area, so we have every Ugandan having gone through Budo and gone through Mwiri and the like. So there has to be a concerted effort at nation building, served by its education systems, by its trade systems and everything. But currently we have a system where a person can be born, raised, educated, marries and works in one area without moving, except if they're going for a burial and a wedding. I think that is a recipe for disaster. But what I know also is that we can celebrate our diversity without really being at each other's throats. Currently, what you're seeing here is an escalation of politics, that there's going to be a national election coming place, and each time there's a national election, we always have these things flaring. It's just that this time it is the Balaalo and they're not flaring. Before that, we have seen it as we have acknowledged before. The Bafuru in Bunyoro, they were there. Before that, you know, we have had issues around Uganda, but that is in the very, very far past. So these histories have always been there. So if we master our history, we identify the drivers of these kind of differences and conflicts and address them with the national agenda. We have a Ministry of National Guidance, I think of ICT and National Guidance. These are the times for these kinds of things to come. Even if we are to use vehicles like the NRM spokesperson, because you are the party in power. So as a party in power, you have a duty to manage this country until you hand over power. But while you're still managing it, these are some of the crises that have to be made. What is the nation-building agenda we have? Not just temporarily, it's called really band-aid, that okay, for these ones are quarreling with the other one, then you sit them together and okay, this one must leave for the other one, so as to make the other one happy. I also don't believe by the Honorable Dombo that if you move to a place, you don't have a right to participate in the politics in that place. I think if you've lived in a place and people think you are the best candidate to rule and manage, it could be an LC 5 seat, an LC 1 seat, or an MP position, and they feel you should be the right person to rule, there's no harm in that. In any case, until, even I remember, even we've always had at MP level, people managing, becoming MPs in areas where they're not ethnically arising from. So these processes can be managed. I think what we are seeing is a different kind of selfish politics, which is more conflictual and which is very dangerous. But they can be managed in piecemeal. One, teach coexistence. But as I say, we should punish criminal behavior. If there's any criminality in the movements, no one is saying that shouldn't be. You wake up one morning, you grab someone's land, let them, the law deal with you. And we have laws in this country. But where people have moved, following the laws of demand and supply and socio-economic forces, I think telling them that because your ancestry is not tied to this particular kind of land, therefore you should not participate in the affairs of that place, I think is problematic and it's not progressive citizenship. Thank you.
Okay, let me read some feedback here. Please let him be very careful and clear. Does he mean that they have all the power to grab land, everything in the country by force and not by law? This is to Honorable Mukasa. I saw what and how these Balaalo are masquerading in the north, forgetting that the Lango and they are surely inclusive of the Teso regions, that their lands were, how they were stolen and in the shadow of the Karamojong, okay? Those wielding aggression with guns and arrogance, the cows are bought in the wee hours of the night, and the locals see the animals destroying the crops. Let's not mix politics with land matters in the north. That won't work, okay? Christopher here says, thank you for the show, Timothy. This is Christopher from Chenga. Please, Honorable Mala should know that much as death cannot be prevented by any hospital in the world, he has said there are medical measures that can put in place in order to minimize the occurrence through refurbished medical facilities, which government is speaking for and has failed to do. This is Christopher in Chengera. He also says the Balaalo question has got something to do with grabbing land from northerners, which is ideally a state-managed issue, okay? This is Mwaka from Gulu. Thank you for the show. The enhancement on the issue of Balaalo in northern Uganda, as Honorable Mukasa has alluded, every Ugandan has a right to lawfully acquire land as long as they follow the due process. Now the major issue is that the local council leaders and cultural leaders who consented to this acquisition land of the Balaalo, these agreements are valid, and the Balaalo to use the land as fit as they should is inconveniencing the neighbors through fencing and the other issues, okay? The Balaalo issue really is perturbed. If it's true that they're using the land they paid money for, Ugandans, they have the right to utilize the land. A problem would be grazing in the land that does not belong to them. If I can go to a country and become a resident, why restrict Ugandans in their own country, okay? Finally, dear Mr. Nyangweso, this is Billy in Subuga from Nigeria. I think our brothers in the north are being a bit selfish. I worked in Mbale for 6 years. There are all kinds of communities there. Banyankole, Acholi, Baganda, Basoga, Itesots, and you will never believe the Bagisu did not quarrel. Secondly, the Balaalo paid money for the land. You cannot just wake up and throw them out. Let's not just push the Balaalo out like they are not Ugandans, please. Okay, quite a number of messages that have come through, but we'll leave it at that. So I'll give each of you parting shots. I'll start with Professor, Honorable Mbide, Daniel, and finally Honorable Dombo. Your parting shots, Professor, but also a comment on your expectations tomorrow on the State of the Nations. What should the President address?
Wow, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, thank you. I think just our parting shots on this issue, I think let us learn to harmoniously coexist and let us emulate what has happened in other parts of the country, that people are coexisting. But I think, as Honorable Mukasambide has said, let us come up with a serious land management policy. Because you see, it's not just in the north where people are selling and then they turn around and they deny having sold. All of us are facing that in this country. Yep. These days when you are buying land which is not titled land, or where there's a family concerned, you must make sure the whole family sits together. Because one set of the family sells, another set of the family denies that they sold, and the ones who sold you and you paid for will gang up with the other one and deny. So they have your money and also deny you the land. So I think this, I know having family consultations was supposed to ensure people are not dispossessed, but it has also become a vehicle for fraud. Exactly. So I think that needs to be resolved, exactly, where some sell and then others claim they haven't done. I think that is very important. Another parting shot, let us learn to coexist. We have one small country, we are reproducing very fast. 67% of our population is under age 15. When all of these people grow into adults and have children, this country is going to blow up in terms of population size. We are going to require land. It's not going to be sufficient and possible to tie people to the land of ancestry. So as Honorable Mbide has said, we need a new land policy which is alive to these dimensions. To the parting shots tomorrow, sorry, for not parting shots, the State of the Nation address, of course I'm looking forward to the State of the Nation address, and I'm hoping and believing that the President is going to say something about the economy and how we can develop this economy. And I'm more interested in having an economy developed in a way that speaks to the way of life of the people. I think one of the reasons we are suffering, including this, is wanting to drive people in one direction, oblivious of what actually the people are. Can we rethink development models that are alive to the way of life of Ugandans and to the experiences people have had? I think if we do that, like for example, if we hadn't brought people from the camps into full blast market economy, maybe these resentments would not be there. So I expect the President to tell us on what next we can do to develop, how are we doing economically, and as usual, he always gives pieces of advice on how we can do things differently. So I'm looking forward. I'll be on my TV to watch. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mukasambide.
Yes, because the professor has really covered what I would have said. But in addition to that, because I associate myself entirely with that submission on the need for development of a substantive master plan, land use, land guidelines, land ownership, acquisition processes, and we must now also understand. My expectation is practically on what the President needs to address on the State of the Nation. Let us agree entirely that there is no longer any controversy on history. There is a consensus on the historical circumstances that befell Uganda. Let us now develop a going forward procedure. The President should this time address us on the enough current affairs that we have than the historicity of actually the faucet or of whatever happened in Uganda. We are in agreement with history. There is no controversy. It is agreed we were colonized, but now going forward, what are we doing with our own status of current affairs? The challenges on the emerging challenges on terrorism, I would like the President to address it. We don't know what is happening. We have now started having spasmodic appearances of terrorist activities. We also need the president to address the country on, for example, the status of parish development model as he has covered, because he has conducted the report himself, and I'm sure he has handed it over to himself. So we expect the assessment done by again himself, so that we will know going forward what the country should do and who he's going to tell to implement. So we know these are things. Then also finally that there is equality of all Ugandans before the law. If the penal code applies to sellers of groundnuts, the same penal code applies to sellers and buyers of land. The penal code applies to northern Uganda. It applies within the territory of the Republic of Uganda. There is no way we shall expect the president now to be seized with the powers of penalizing those he considers have violated the penal code simply because they are Balaalo. To the extent then that where he finds them having fallen by the wayside of the law, he decides himself to offer judgment without even a hearing that they should now leave. Take their cattle and we shall look at whether or not they will own their land again. Now, in my opinion, that is illegal. The president needs to do that. Finally, let the Attorney General deposit a declaration or under the protocol on the African Charter on Human and People's Rights for the establishment of the court, the African Court on Human and People's Rights. Ugandans do not have access to justice in that court until the Attorney General deposits a declaration. These brothers of mine here, their court, substantive court of jurisdiction would be the African Court in Tanzania. Because here, even the Chief Justice has an opinion. I don't think you can have justice where the Chief Justice himself is almost a petitioner. So, in my opinion, let the Attorney General deposit a declaration and we start helping our people.
Thank you very much. Daniel, both your concluding remarks, but also
and the Minister.
What do you expect the President to say tomorrow?
Number one, I think feedback through Honorable Odombo from Dr. Mona a bit injured me. I'm sorry to Dr. Omona, and I look forward that we sit down and talk. Through you, as the SEC member, kindly don't, an eye for an eye is not a way forward. That's number one. Number two, it's good that maybe the president, whom I believe is watching, should have a chat before the State of the Nation address. I know he's pressured. I know he's also on the wall to convince his brother, the Chief Justice. I don't want to go there. They find a way of not, again, that. I mean, these cows can be turned into compensation. You know, that's the biggest complaint. Then number three, together with the Right Honorable Speaker, they can avail money. Then number three, let the budget that was given to Northern Uganda Ministry be used for verification, not victimization. Yeah, because it was availed for that joint verification team to come on ground and verify compliance. Because now we are no longer talking about executive order. No, we are talking of presidential guidelines. There were maybe some, allow me, I don't know whether it can, I wanted to read something. First of all, somebody asked that if the land is customary, is it only customary to cattle keepers? Why is it Achoris, Sudanese, Kenyans, Eritreans, Indians, even Bazungu have title on customary land, including Dr. Mona? That's number one. Then number two, he said, order number 3 was issued, but after engagements up to State's House, there were 2 teams one led by Chief Justice, Balaalo must go as a native Acholi, which is okay. And another team led by General Tema, Balaalo must stay as a patriotic Ugandan who has no issues with tribe, because he has been with them in Dutches and everywhere. He doesn't matter who saved him. So finally, the president and the team agreed on those guidelines. And so we are no longer talking about, say, can you go and update our General Secretary General? Yeah, so let these guidelines be verified instead of victimization, because the 4 wires, that then we team up. Whoever is not complying, go. That's what we expect. Then lastly, I don't have my relatives in this government, however much they think I'm Nangendumubi as they call us, but they all perished in the war. So I appeal to the president that like this, he should now act as a statesman, as our true liberator, not as a politician anymore. It's high time he gives us that gift of a statesman we went behind, and he is capable.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Honorable Dombo, your parting shots, and what do you see the president say tomorrow?
You know, President Museveni cannot be a statesman only to one community.
Everywhere, that's what I meant.
The president is going to be a statesman to all the people of Uganda. And he will open his ears to wherever there have been issues of complaints emerging, like he did in Bunyoro, like he's doing in other places. I did ask Honorable Mona that question about us. Me, I came from Bunyole, and I bought land here in Buganda where I'm staying. I said, what about that? Then he said, who is complaining?
Uganda complaining.
Nobody is complaining because you bought, you are staying with people. And I know the level of integration in Uganda we had reached is so good. And he said, but when you buy and there is a complaint, then somebody might listen to the complaint so that a solution can be found. So when my brother here talks about dialogue, could be that's what some of the things that should be done. But I believe this matter should not be a thin-faced, because President Museveni is not persecuting the Balaalo in any way, but he must be having credible evidence and credible intelligence on the basis on which he's basing to take certain decisions. If he's not, I think he has generals on the ground, he has ministers in charge of that region, he has ISOs in that area. They give him credible evidence. He also has religious people and friends who definitely feed him information on which he bases to make decisions. But I believe constructive engagement is the way to go. That's the only way we can keep a country together. On the issue of state of the nation, when I was in Parliament, we tried to find out whether there could be an enabling law to talk about what the president should say, because it gives the president an open check for him or her, whichever the president may be, to talk about areas of what he chooses. What the president usually does, he usually concentrates on strategic issues, and he leaves most of the economic matters for the budget speech, which comes in 1 week after the State of the Nation. But you saw what happened on the Namgongo Day, yes, Martyrs Day, when the security in the country was able to keep the people of Uganda safe during this exercise. He should be telling us something about the security. How did he do it? Our people in the opposition have criticized security for not doing a good job? Aren't they happy that the people of Uganda are safe?
Yes.
These are questions which we could be talking about. But we must agree that Uganda is the only country we have, and let us make it safer and cleaner for us to live there. As we wait for the president, because he's the one with the constitutional right to tell us what he thinks the state of the nation is. The other time in Parliament, I was very surprised and disappointed. The Minister for Finance openly came up to make a plea that Ugandans are not paying taxes. And just yesterday, we saw another approval in Parliament, people borrowing money in order to be able to finance our budget. Is there something we could do differently to expand our tax base? Can oil come faster so that it can relieve the government of Uganda and the people of Uganda on the way we finance our budget? These are hard questions, but we shall wait for the president during the State of the Nation.
Thank you. I want to thank, first of all, Daniel, thank you for being very civil, especially apologizing and also going forward there. Gentlemen and lady, thank you very much for gracing us and agreeing to come to our invite here. The technical team for making today possible. We're really grateful. We'll end with this quote by Dr. Martin Luther King. It says, we must learn to live together as brothers or perish together as fools. Good morning.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Here's your chance to win school fees for your child for a whole year. Just pay school fees using Momo. Dial *165 *80#. Select option 2 for school pay. Select option 1 to pay school fees. Enter the student number and amount and approve the transaction. You will now enter the draw to win school fees.
The government's core mandate is to maintain law and order, safeguard citizens' rights, and provide essential public services.
Remember, one of the pillars of a roadmap is innovation and entrepreneurship.
There has been this question of how are you protecting our indigenous seed?
There's going to be a toll project that answers somebody's question.
For the past 20 weeks, the front bench has brought you insightful discussions on governance, security, healthcare, justice, and commerce.
When you go through this complicated procedure, involve the lawyers, you bring the case against him, the judge will hear you out and pass judgment, and you're out of court in record time.
We remain committed to keeping you informed and engaged on key national matters.
So these are huge, these are powerful organizations which now Uganda chairs. Why don't you come together?
If we haven't migrated to the e-card because of various reasons, including that not all the people of Uganda have smartphones.
You can sit in your house, apply for a passport.
If you have a Ugandan who has a successful logistics firm in the US, it means he can come to Uganda and do a lot more.
Now airing every Monday at 8:30 p.m. with me, Cedric, your interface with the government only on your public broadcaster, UBC, inspiring Uganda.
This is a short story about you. No, I don't mean that this is you. No, this is not you. This is me. Of course, this can't be you. This can't be you because you think these things of touring Uganda are for rich people. You think these touring things are for people celebrating anniversaries. This can't be you. Because you think to enjoy wildlife, you have to first put in a leave request at work. Chimpanzees are just a 30-minute boat ride from Entebbe. And you get a chance to feed, name a chimpanzee, or even adopt a chimpanzee. You can even actually use this as a rehearsal to see if you can really provide food for another living thing. God gave us a beautiful country on a budget. We don't have to fly there, we are already here. This is ours, uniquely ours.
In a nation hungry for truth, a world where every story matters, there exists a beacon of trust and reliability. For decades, they've been our voice and our window to the world, holding the mirror of our history. With 4 TV stations and 11 radio channels spanning 27 languages, they stand as guardians of information, defenders of truth. With Mascari Heritage Advantage, they uphold every citizen's right to reliable and free information. Their archive stories shaped our past and illuminate our present. Yet now, as new challenges arise and the world evolves, their mission faces its greatest test yet. Be part of our journey and let's navigate the unknown, uncover the untold, and safeguard our future together. Tune into your public broadcaster, for it is the intersection of trust and truth. Because to UBC, your story, and every voice matters. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
To have you on the program with us. So we have confirmation now of another phone call between the U.S. and Russian presidents, certainly something that would have been unimaginable in the final few years of the Biden administration. Do you see this as a good sign?
I think this is a great sign. President Trump was doing a inadvertent, press conference on a tarmac a week or so ago. And when asked about the assassination attempt on President Putin and his helicopter, the drone strikes directed by Ukraine during a ceasefire, President Trump indicated he wasn't aware of any of that. So I think the people around President Trump are not getting him the information of what's really happening. So the fact that President Putin can share directly with Donald Trump, not have the information blocked from President Trump, I think is a fantastic thing, including these terror attacks. And Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, has acknowledged and apologized and shown sympathy for the terrorist attack in Bryansk on the railway. But I think the fact that there is now direct communication where President Trump is getting direct information about what's really going on rather than filtered and one-sided information from his own advisors.
Yeah, you're right. It was clear that Trump wasn't getting the full picture of what was taking place in the conflict recently. Steve, Putin and Trump discussed Ukraine's attacks on multiple air bases deep inside Russia that took place over the weekend. Putin said he will have to respond to the attacks, and we're waiting to see what that response is. What kind of response are you expecting from Russia?
I think certainly military targets in Ukraine, and I think, unfortunately, power stations, energy resources are now fairly in the target sites because there was an agreement not to hit each other's infrastructure. And Ukraine, as expected, has violated those terms as well. I also think it is good that President Trump and President Putin were speaking specifically so that President Putin can share with President Trump the targets that were directed, probably not by the U.S., but certainly by Britain and by France and Ukraine, were at these strategic nuclear bombers. And under the START treaty that the U.S. and Russia are a part of, the reason those bombers are parked in plain view is because Russia